Hi and welcome to another video tutorial. In this video tutorial what I'm going to be doing is showing you what an interrupt is and discussing the role of interrupts in relation to the CPU. So what is an interrupt? Well, an interrupt is a signal that's sent to the CPU which tells the CPU that something else needs attention. Okay, so it's a signal that's sent to the CPU to tell the CPU that something else needs attention. And an interrupt signal can be sent by either a software program or a hardware device. Okay, so it can be sent by software or hardware. An example of a hardware interrupt might be when a key is pressed on the keyboard, and in this case the keyboard sends an interrupt to the CPU to tell the CPU that a keystroke needs to be read. An example software interrupt would be when a software program needs to write data to the disk or do some other I/O operation. So an example software interrupt would be if you have, for example, a word processor open and you press the save button in the word processor. An interrupt may be sent which would notify the CPU that that some data needs to be written to the disk. Okay, so now I'm going to briefly talk about what happens when the CPU receives an interrupt. So there's three major points that you need to remember for this. So the first is that when a CPU receives an interrupt, the program which it's currently running is suspended, and the values of each register in the CPU and the program counter are put on the system stack. So you can imagine the CPU is running a program, the fetch decode execute cycle is going along quite nicely, and then an interrupt is received, and the current program that it's running during that fetch decode execute cycle is suspended, and all of the data that's stored in the CPU registers and indeed the program counter is put on the system stack to keep that safe. And next, an interrupt service routine is called to deal with the interrupt. So depending on what interrupt is received, a different interrupt service routine is called to service it. So this is a sequence of instructions that is used to deal with a particular kind of interrupt. So the ISR or interrupt service routine is called, the appropriate one is called to deal with the interrupt. And then lastly, after the interrupt service routine has finished, the values of the processor registers and the program counter are retrieved off the system stack, and the fetch decode execute cycle continues to run the original program. Okay, so those are the three stages that take place when a interrupt is received by the CPU. The current program is suspended, the register and PC values are taken from the CPU and stored on the system stack. An interrupt service routine appropriate for the type of interrupt that's been received is called to deal with the interrupt. And after that's finished, the register values and PC value is taken back from the system stack and stored back in the processor registers and the program counter, and then the original program continues to run. And the last point that's worth mentioning is that after each fetch decode execute cycle, so once the execute part of the fetch decode execute cycle has finished, the processor checks to see if any interrupts have been received during the time at which that particular run of the fetch decode execute cycle was being completed. Okay, so I hope you found this video on CPU interrupts useful, and thanks for watching.